The Children's Bible, 2 Samuel 14 through 18. David and Absalom. In all Israel there was no handsomer man than Absalom, the king's favorite son. From the sole of his foot to the crown of his head there was no blemish in him. He cut his hair every year when it became too heavy for his head, and his hair weighed 200 shekels on the king's scales. And King David loved Absalom very dearly. Absalom had chariots and horses, and 50 men to attend him. He would rise early in the morning and wait at the gate near the palace of judgment, and if anybody came with a case to lay before the king, Absalom would call unto him and ask where he came from. If the man said that he was an Israelite, Absalom would say, "You are certainly in the right, but there is nobody here to represent you. If I were judge, any man could come to me with his case, and I would do him justice." If any man came to bow down to Absalom, he would have none of it, but took him by the hand and kissed him. And so Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. One day he said to the king, "Let me go to Hebron to fulfill a vow which I made to the Lord while I was in Syria." King David said, "Go in peace." So Absalom went to Hebron, and he sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, "As soon as you hear the sound of a trumpet, then you must proclaim that Absalom rules in Hebron." Absalom had with him 200 men from Jerusalem who knew nothing of the conspiracy, and more people turned to Absalom. Then a messenger came to David and warned him, and he said to all of his servants, "We must flee, or otherwise we shall not be able to escape from Absalom." So he fled from Jerusalem with all his household. But the ark of the Lord and Zadok the priest remained in the city. So there was war between David and his son Absalom. David divided his army into 3 parts, and he was prepared to go forth with it. But his people said, "You must not go forth, for nobody cares about us except you. You are worth 10,000 of us, so it is better that you should lead us from inside the city." David said, "I will do whatever you think best." He stood by the gate, and the people came out by the hundreds and thousands. He spoke to his commanders, Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, and said, "Deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom." And all the people heard what he said about Absalom. A great battle was fought in the wood of Ephraim, and the people of Israel were defeated by the armies of David, and 20,000 men were killed. Absalom met the servants of David. He was riding a horse, and the horse went under a great oak tree, and Absalom's head got caught in the thick boughs of the oak, so that he dangled between heaven and earth, and his horse galloped away from beneath him. A man saw him there and told Joab, saying, "I have seen Absalom hanging in an oak tree." Joab said, "Since you saw him, why did you not strike him to the ground? I would have given you 10 shekels of silver." The man said, "Not for 1,000 shekels of silver would I raise my hand against the king's son, for I heard the king telling you and Abishai and Ittai not to touch the young man Absalom. It would have been as much as my life was worth, for nothing can be hidden from the king, and you yourself would have blamed me." "I cannot tarry thus with you," said Joab. He took 3 darts in his hand and thrust them into the heart of Absalom, who was still alive and hanging from the oak tree. And 10 of Joab's young men surrounded Absalom and stabbed him to death. David sat between 2 gates, and the watchman went up to the roof over the gate by the wall, and saw a man running toward the city. The watchman told the king, and the king said, "If he is alone, then he must be coming with news." Then the watchman saw another man, and he said to the king, "The first man runs very much like Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok." The king said, "He is a good man. He will be coming with good news." Ahimaaz called up to the king and said, "All is well." Then he fell on his face before the king and said, "Blessed be the Lord God, which has delivered up the men who lifted their hand against my lord the king." And the king said, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" Ahimaaz said, "When Joab sent me and the other messenger, everything was in great confusion, and I do not know what was happening." The king said, "Go and stand aside." Then the other messenger, Cushai, arrived, and he said, "News, my lord king. The Lord has avenged you on those who rebelled against you." And the king said to Cushai, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" Cushai said, "May the enemies of my lord the king, and all that seek to harm you, be as Absalom is now." The king was greatly distressed, and he went up to the chamber over the gate, weeping, and saying, "O my son Absalom, my son Absalom! Would God I had died for you, O Absalom, my son, my son!"